We are going to start off today talking about sports, not any change of format, but frankly, the big story today is not weather related as it has been the last few days, even though people in Florida are still trying to rebuild their lives. What just happened in baseball is freaking insane. And I'm bringing on Bullpen Betty, that's what she goes by, a veteran podcaster, and she's done radio about baseball, to discuss this achievement involving a certain team from the Midwest with a politically incorrect nickname. Betty, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm good. All I can say about what the Indians have done is wow. I mean, we knew they were good. They came close to winning the World Series last year with a pretty young team, which isn't necessarily an advantage down the stretch, though it is long term, and with a lot of injuries. They almost beat the Cubs. And
Right, the Cubs.
21 games in a row. I mean, even if you're winning 75% of all your games, which no one has ever done, that's pretty impossible to do. No one's ever done it in the American League.
Right. So the mistake by the lake might not be a mistake after all. This is the 21 games in the American League. I guess the National League, the New York Giants won something like 26 games in a row, like in the early 1900s.
Yeah, but they had
like
a tie in there. I think one game was considered a tie. The Cubs, I think, in the 30s or 40s did it, but they won, what, 5-3 against the Tigers today, who are pretty bad.
Right. So the interesting thing is their schedule coming up is not so difficult. They don't have like Houston or Boston, the Indians, I'm saying. They don't have Houston or Boston in their future. And the last time they lost, it was against Boston. So not only have they won 21 games, but they have a fairly moderate to easy schedule for the rest of the season.
Well, I mean, we know they're going to the playoffs. I mean, that they're going to, and they may catch Houston for the best record if they haven't already done so. But I forget who's ahead right now. So it really doesn't matter. They're going to win the division. But who do they play coming up?
So Houston, actually, Cleveland is ahead of Houston right now.
Oh, they are. I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, all of the games in the all of the teams in the American League are still, in a race for the pennant. The National League, actually, Washington clinched the division already, and the Dodgers are assured of a playoff.
Well, the way they've been playing, they're assured of the playoff spot. They may not win the division, which is amazing, but we'll get to them in a second. Who are Cleveland's next few games against after they finish with Detroit?
So Cleveland is playing Kansas City next.
Okay, well, Kansas City's still technically in it for a wild card, but they're not that good.
Yeah.
They're mediocre.
So the thing is that, if you look, so Kansas City, they've won 72 games. Cleveland's won 90, right? So, yes, technically they're still in it. They're really not that far behind in terms of a second wild card, Kansas City. You've got the Angels and Kansas City right below the line, right behind the Minnesota Twins. And a lot of these teams are really packed in close together, so there's still a race there for that second wild card.
Yeah, it's hard to get excited, though. I mean, there's really no pennant races going on, and all the action is about the second wild card, and we're talking teams that are right around 500. So I guess it makes sense what baseball did with the second wild card, anticipating a year like this, because if there weren't, there would be absolutely nothing to watch in September. I've never heard of anything happening like that when there were 4 teams from each league that made the postseason, but really, there would be nothing going on to follow in September.
I know where you're headed, but I have as a New Yorker and a Yankee fan, the Yanks can still are still chasing Boston.
Yeah,
and partially, I will tell you why, is because the Yankees have like 17 more games, and 14 of them are at home.
Okay, and they probably have a lot of them against Boston. Yeah, they could still catch Boston, but they'll still both end up making the playoffs. The Yankees have, like a 3 or 4 game lead for the first wild card?
Yeah, they're 3 games ahead in the wild card, and they're 4 games behind Boston in the division.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, we know in baseball any team can win any day, though, down the stretch with good pitching and something to play for, it is a big advantage. How good is this Indians team? Are they just hot right now? What do you know about them?
No, I think they're really good. I don't think it's a fluke. I don't think you can win 21 games by accident. And Andrew Miller is going to be activated tomorrow. They haven't even been playing with Andrew Miller.
Well, if they're winning the games by a lot, that probably doesn't matter. Andrew Miller being their closer.
But now that, like, are the pitchers tired? Is the bullpen tired? Whatever. Well, now they've got like this amazing guy coming back, like, to just fortify the rest of the season and the playoffs. Obviously. So, and I love Andrew Miller, former Yankee, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So they're definitely the real deal. I don't know that the Dodgers are the real deal.
Well, I mean,
and
that is almost more of an achievement of what the Indians have been doing. I mean, like, look, you can win. It's impossible to win 21 games. It's amazing. I'm not taking anything away. But they're the better team in every game that they play. Yeah. I mean, with all due respect to Houston and Boston, I don't think the Yankees are quite at the same level, no offense. Yeah. I mean, the Indians are the best team in the American League. I mean, they got great young players. They have great young pitchers. They're good. But still, winning 21 is impossible. What's really more mathematically interesting is what the Dodgers were doing. They were on a pace to win 115 games or something like that, possibly break a record for wins in a season. And then they went on a 16-game stretch in which they had the same record over 16 games as the Cleveland Browns.
Right. I think plenty of teams have won 15 out of 16, but I don't think that any team has ever then turned around and lost the next 15 out of 16.
Well, I don't know if it was
as badly as they did well.
It wasn't quite that extreme.
And really, Kershaw is the only time they've won in the last 16 games is when Kershaw's pitching.
Well, their pitching's not that great. I mean, I looked at their team; they're good, right, but I don't see them as that great. I mean, they're not to talk about a mutual friend of ours, 86 Mets, who even our friendship with Lenny aside, really comes to mind for me as the most dominant team of my lifetime, though you can make a case for the 98 Yankees. I mean, the Dodgers aren't that overwhelming, and they're in a good division, too, so I don't get it, but the Dodgers...
Well, I'll say something maybe not so nice.
What?
It seems to me that the Dodgers choke came along with Curtis Granderson's arrival.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I can't imagine. I mean, he's known as a good guy. But you know what it is, also.
I've got Dodger fans telling me that it's true and that he's the worst and get him off the team, like they're freaking out.
But he's known as a good guy and a good teammate.
He's a great guy, but, he's the strikeout king also, isn't he?
Well, I don't know. I'm from Philly, where the Philly area where Ryan Howard played, so I don't know. But maybe the current one. And he doesn't even have as many home runs as Howard did. At least Howard, looked like a guy who would strike a lot. The thing with the Dodgers, though, part of it may be that they were so far up, and this can often be a problem in other sports, that they didn't have much to play for, and they may have lost whatever edge they had. At a certain point, they said, I don't know if they're partying at night, or if they just don't, at a certain point, you look at the standings and say, we can sort of mail it in. And that can help you in the playoffs. The 2005 White Sox...
Look at managers.
What?
I mean, Terry Francona, against Dave Roberts. I mean, I think you take Francona, right?
Well, they have something in common. Roberts did a huge part in getting Francona his first World Series. I don't know. Look, I'm, again, from the Philadelphia area. The Phillies didn't do anything when Francona was manager, but they had a lousy team.
Well, right. You can only do but so much.
I mean, they had a little more talent on the Indians. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what happened with the Dodgers. But, teams have done something like this before. I looked it up. In 2005, down the stretch, the White Sox went like 4-10, close to the end of the season, almost blew the division, and then utterly dominated the postseason. I think they lost like one game that whole postseason. And then I looked at it, the 64 Phillies, before my time, it wasn't quite as many games, but they just blew every game down the stretch. But in 82, I looked at this. The Atlanta Braves were having that America's team year, started off the year 13-0, and then they basically got so many fans there, they removed the Indian Chiefs teepee, which was in left field, and they lost like 21 of 22 games, almost blew the division. They did not, but they did end up losing in 3 straight games to St. Louis in the playoffs. And I also saw in 87, Milwaukee started off the year 13-0 out of absolutely nowhere back when they were still in the American League. And I think they were like 17-3 at one point. And then within a few weeks, we're 22-21. Though, truth be told, they ended up the year 91-71 and, didn't make the playoffs. I think the Tigers had a pretty good team, won close to 100 games that year, so they weren't a factor. But these weird things, I mean, it's beyond random chance when teams go through slumps like that.
And then keep in mind, I mean, anything can happen in playoff games. It's a whole different ball game, literally, when the playoffs hit, right? Like teams, they just flip. And going back to the Yankees, for example, in the playoffs, the Yankees will be able to use their bullpen a lot the way the schedule, it goes. So there's different strategies and nuances and rising to the occasion and not during the playoffs that the regular season doesn't. And you can argue that, but you've seen it happen, right? Look at the '88 Mets.
Well, yeah, but we know about that. Davey Johnson screwed things up. If you talk to Lenny about that, the the interesting thing in the National League is the Dodgers, I think, have made the postseason 12 times without making the World Series now since 1988. Maybe it's only 8, something like that. And Washington,
so that goes to show.
And Washington, whether in Washington or Montreal, it's not that many times, has never won a postseason series other than in '81, like the short series they had against Philadelphia. What was it? 2 out of 3. They only had to win 2 out of 3 in the mini series, like the first half winner, second half winner. So if I'm the Cubs or the Diamondbacks, and presumably the Rockies if they get through the first round. I mean, like the Diamonds and Rockies, Diamondbacks and Rockies just don't have that much of a playoff history. I'm looking pretty good. Those are teams that have historically been chokers in recent history. So, I mean, any of those AL teams could be good as far as we know. But.
Yeah. Well, we got another month. We'll see or not even a month, 17, 18 games.
Yeah, any other interesting things going on in baseball? I mean, no one's that bad. The Phillies have the worst record in baseball, but they're rebuilding, and they've been playing better the second half of the season. I mean, San Francisco has really been disappointing. Who's going to win the postseason awards this year, probably, at this point?
That's a good, I don't really know. You could go, Rookie of the Year, those kinds of awards. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, Judge is going to win it in the AL, for sure, and I guess Bellinger wins Rookie of the Year.
He fell off, obviously, after the All-Star game. I mean, Benintendi also was, in there, but
Who?
he got Benintendi from Boston.
Oh, right.
But he's amazing, except he didn't play so well against the Yankees last series, the Boston Yankees series. So we'll see. I mean, Judge definitely was winning it in the first half. We'll see. And then, Cy Young, AL, I don't know, Kluber or Sale, except the Yankees kill Sale, or in the NL, Kershaw.
Yeah.
We'll see.
How about MVP? I mean, that's something that has changed in recent years. There's not so much emphasis on home runs anymore. Like Stanton is so far ahead in home runs for the Marlins, but Marlins really haven't been a factor at all this year, and they don't value home runs as much as they used to. Like when a guy like Ryan Howard could win MVP, which probably couldn't happen anymore, even with 58 home runs.
Yeah, I don't even want to venture to guess that one.
Yeah, well, we'll know toward the end of the season, even though there won't be any really pennant races. Not that any games really matter for too many teams at this point, unless it's a big choke or a big surge.
Well, I mean, the Cubs, they're still close to St. Louis and the Brewers.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens there, too.
Yeah, I think people are of the belief that the Cubs are just going to fill out, but look, they could get swept in a series, and then anything could happen in that division. True. I shouldn't have.
It's true.
Yeah, that is the one division where things could still happen, and I guess the AL East. But we'll see. Anyhow, thank you for joining me today. Congratulations to the Cleveland Indians. Wow. It's time to start paying attention to baseball, I guess, at least just till the end of this winning streak.
Yep.
And the one thing which is frustrating about baseball in the postseason is that you can have a team with a really dominant record, and then they just go out in the first round of the playoffs. I'm thinking, well, Seattle went out in the ALCS. They had such a better record than anyone else in baseball that year, but they lost to the Yankees in the American League Championship Series, after utterly dominating the postseason with 116 wins. And they've never won a World Series or even been to one. So that's what makes baseball interesting, I guess.
It certainly does.
All right, Bullpen Betty, how can people follow you?
Bullpen Betty, if you go to bullpenbetty.com, you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook quite easily.
Okay, thank you for coming on Backlash today.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot, Adam.
See ya.